Hi everyone, hope you guys are doing well. This is James from Divine Crochet, welcome to my channel. For today's video, I thought I'd take you guys through the process of me constructing a crochet turtleneck jumper. But in case you can't tell, I definitely have an affinity for maximalism, and this has definitely trickled into my crochet work. As you'll know, if you like fashion, you can have as many unique pieces as you'd like. You definitely need basics to be able to pair them with, to be able to make your wardrobe stretch a lot longer. So whilst I will crochet some wacky stuff, I also need to make sure that I'm crocheting basics. This turtleneck pattern is one that I've used for quite some time, even as a beginner, so this is very beginner friendly. You can go ahead and add any color changes, graphics, appliques, anything like that you would like to. But for me, I am actually challenging myself to just leave this one color, no surface crochet, no appliques, just a nice turtleneck. So in England, we had our 3 weeks of summer spread out over the 3 months of summer, and that's over now. So I definitely want something a little bit warmer that I can layer with a coat. For this jumper, I'm going to use a raglan design, which means that I'm going to crochet the collar first and work down from there. For this jumper, I decided to use grey cotton double knit yarn and a 4.5mm hook. As we're doing a turtleneck, this means that we're going to create the turtleneck part of the jumper first. So our first step needs to be to create the collar, which I've decided to use double crochet ribbing, which I'm going to show you guys how to do now. You first want to chain the length of how long you want the collar to be. For me, I will always add a few extra stitches because I always need more stitches than I think. So I would rather add too many stitches than not enough. I've decided on 14 stitches. What I'm now going to do is chain 2 more, skip 3 stitches and work into that 4th stitch.
Make sure that you're skipping those 3 stitches and working your first double crochet into the 4th stitch away from your hook. From here, we're just going to go ahead and put 1 double crochet into each stitch. Where you place your stitch doesn't matter, just work all the way up until your final stitch in your chain row.
So I've now done those 13 double crochets. I'm now going to chain 2 and start the ribbings.
For this pattern, a chain 2 is going to be a double crochet, so our next stitch is going to be in the next stitch along, not the stitch we came out of. Now, if we turn our work so the top is facing us, we can see these V's. We want to put our hook into the back one of these V's, or this is called the back loop. So we're going to work in our double crochets one on top of the other. Working into the back loop is going to be what creates that ribbing effect and is going to be perfect for our collar. I remember as a beginner this was really hard to get used to, but don't worry, it just takes a bit of practice and then it becomes second nature. Especially if you're a beginner, you just want to double check that all of these stitches are kind of landing on top of each other. So to help this, I would make sure that your final double crochet goes into the back loop of the second chain that you made at the start of the previous row.
From here, we're literally just going to go ahead and repeat that till we have a collar that can fit all the way around our neck. Now I'm happy with this. I could sew this up, but I'm going to just run a row of single crochets down the end just to attach the start and the end of the project.
If you're new to working with ribbing, I wouldn't worry about this, but in my opinion the best way to attach ribbing is to go through the back loop of the last row you worked on and then through the 2 stitches that you didn't work through in your chain row, and then I'm going to do my single crochet. So I'll show you again. You want to go in the back loop of the row that you're working on, or the last row you did, and then through the 2 loops of the chain row that you didn't go through. Then you want to yarn over, pull that through, and then do your single crochet.
Once you've attached the start and the end of your ribbing, you just want to check that this still fits over your head, because I have made jumpers before and I've made the collar too small and I've just never been able to wear them, so definitely don't do that. For me, once I've done my ribbing, I go ahead and add 2 single crochets into each one of the double crochets just along the side, just to get ready to start the raglan design.
Make sure you're putting 2 single crochets around each row of double crochets, so the amount of single crochets should be double your rows of double crochets. Once you've reached the end of the row, you want to slip stitch into the first single crochet you made at the start of your row. This is going to be the first time that we're going to be using maths. Sadly, we do actually have to use it twice within this pattern, but it's very easy and I'll break it down to be as simple as I can. To start off, we either need to halve the amount of single crochets that we've just done, or we need to count the amount of rows of double crochets that we've used in our ribbing. So for me, that's going to be 32 either way. You need to split this into a front back panel and a side panel. Now I could do a whole video on crochet maths, but for now just try and keep in mind that the more stitches you give to your side panel, the baggier the sleeves are going to be comparatively. So for me, I want baggy sleeves, so I'm putting a lot more stitches in my side panel than I normally would. You also want to make sure that your front and back panel number is odd. Your final step is you want to -1 away from your front/back panel and then divide this number by 2. Now we have all of the maths that we need to start mapping out our raglan design. So we're going to start counting from the stitch that we slip stitched into. So skipping that, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As my number is 9, I'm going to put my stitch marker into the 9th stitch that I counted. So you should have 8 stitches in between your stitch marker and where you slip stitched. I'm showing you here, if you don't have stitch markers, you can use scrap yarn and pull that through and slip stitch both ends, and this creates a little stitch marker, which is actually really easy to remove. You just have to pull the loop like so. But from here, we're basically marking out the first and last stitch of each panel. So this is the first stitch of my side panel, so stitch number 1. I'm then going to count 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And basically I want to count all the way till I get to my 13th stitch. And that's going to be where I put my stitch marker. So far we've accounted for half of the back panel and the side panel. We then want to do the front panel before we then add another side panel. And then our final stitch marker will be to mark the start of our back panel. At this point you want to check your back and front panel have the same amount of stitches, and the stitch that you slip stitched into is the one in the center. You can now chain 2 to start your new row. God, thank God that's over. I mean, it's a lot of maths, but it's worth doing just because it produces the most professional result. I know it's kind of tedious, but it will definitely be worth it. Now what we can do is just do 1 double crochet into each stitch. Once we get to our stitch marker, we'll work in our final double crochet before we then want to start making room for our increases. So I'm going to chain 2, and then my next double crochet is going to be in my next stitch marker. So we're still going to be doing 1 double crochet into each stitch, or 1 double crochet into each single crochet. We're just going to be adding a chain 2 at this point to act as our increase. At this point you can check that you have the same amount of double crochets as you worked out in the maths before in each panel, but I basically know that the way that I've done my stitch markers, that will be fine. Once you've done that and reached your final stitch, we're going to slip stitch into the second chain we made to start off this row before we then chain 2, and then we can turn our work and start on our next row. Honestly, from now on, what we're going to be doing is pretty easy. We're just going to be doing 1 double crochet into each double crochet. You just want to work along your row up until you reach that first chain 2 that we made. At this point, you want to do 1 double crochet into the chain space before we then chain 2 and put another double crochet in the chain space. Now we can go back to doing what we were doing before, where we do 1 double crochet into each stitch. Once you've worked your way around the whole length of the row, you should have done 4 increases in total, so that's 8 stitches added. You're then going to slip stitch into the second chain you made at the start, and all we're going to do is keep on adding those 8 increases in each row that we add till we get the size that we like. I'll go ahead and try this on till the increases fall just beneath my armpit, and I'm quite happy with the general size. Keep in mind that we still need to add some circumference to both the arm and the body from here. Basically for this row, what we'll be doing is discounting the side panel and just making the round the front and back panel, and this is what we're going to do to create the body of the jumper. So following the pattern as usual, we would do 1 double crochet into each stitch till we reach that increase. Instead of chaining 2 and working our second double crochet into the increase, we'll work our first double crochet into the increase and then chain the length in between the 2 increases when we try it on. The length I want to add each side is equivalent to around the length of 6 double crochets, so I shall be adding 6 chain stitches, keeping them nice and loose. Once you've finished adding those stitches, you're going to do your double crochet into the increase at the start of the front panel, before you then do your double crochets all the way to the other side. You should now be on the other side of your front panel. You then want to mirror the action of doing that double crochet into the increase space, adding the same amount of chain stitches, remember keeping them loose. You'll definitely regret it if you make these tight, so keep these looser than you probably would expect that you would need to. From here we'll do the same thing of putting that double crochet into the increase space before then finishing off this row. At this point we can see the circumference of the body of our jumper as well as the circumference of our sleeves. I would double check that you're happy with this before you move on. To change the size of your jumper, you can either increase or decrease the amount of chains in between your front and back panel, or you can go ahead and add or take away some of the rows, increasing the amount of stitches in the round that we were doing before that. I'm very happy with this size, so I'm just going to chain 2 and continue doing those double crochets. This time we'll be doing 1 double crochet into each chain stitch. From here on we're completely done with adding increases, so you can just go ahead and do 1 double crochet into each stitch till you reach the start of the row, where you'll slip stitch into the second chain you made to start off this row before chaining 2 and turning your work, before then continuing with the pattern of doing 1 double crochet into each stitch. You just want to build up as many rows as you need to get to the length of the jumper that you would like. You just want to keep on trying this piece on till you reach the length that you're happy with. I want to add quite a thick ribbing, so I'm going to end my row quite soon. Just make sure you're accounting for how much ribbing you want to add. My next step now is going to be to add the arms before I then go ahead and add all of the ribbing separately. Once you're 100% happy with the length of your jumper, you're going to cut your yarn and pull that end through to finish off your body. Now to start our sleeves, we want to cast on a row in the hole that we created by fastening up the side panels. So I make sure I'm happy with which side is facing which way. And I'm just going to insert my hook into the part of the chain stitch that I didn't work into when I was working around the first row of the body. From here, I'm going to pull that slip knot through, chain 2, and then start adding my double crochets. As I had 6 stitches, I couldn't work in a middle stitch, so I just decided to work in the stitch that was closer to the back of my jumper, which is where that back seam is, where we were doing those turning chains. So you want to work 1 double crochet into each chain till you reach the point where we have our increase and then our row of just double crochets. So what you could do is you could just work straight into that row of double crochets from here, but that leaves quite a big hole here. So what I tend to do is I will do 1 double crochet into the increase space, so that's going to be this big hole right here. I'll do 1 double crochet in here before I then work into doing 1 double crochet on top of the double crochets that I made for the side panel. Now obviously if your sleeve is already looking a little bit too big, you can go ahead and omit those extra double crochets that I add in the increase space, but for me this does achieve a neater result. However you decide to work around your sleeve, you just want to go ahead and work in those double crochets till you reach the start of your row. At this point you can slip stitch into the second chain, chain 2, turn your work. You should be used to this at this point because we've done it so many times. Again, you just want to repeat this step up until you reach the length of sleeve that you're happy with, bearing in mind that we will be adding ribbing later. So it's a few days later and I have finished both my sleeves. For that second sleeve I just mirrored the amount of stitches around the sleeve and I mirrored the amount of rows. So effectively you just want to repeat what you've just done for that first sleeve. Normally I could get these sleeves done easily in a day, but basically I have a lot of patterns that I'm writing at the moment and I've just come to the end of quite a lot of them, so I haven't really had a lot of time to just crochet what I want. I don't really talk about it much on my YouTube. I do actually release patterns on my Etsy. I've just had these massive launch of these graphic mesh vests as well as some matching sleeves, so I would really appreciate if you guys go and check that out. I'm going to link that down in the link below. But anyway, back to the turtleneck. All I need to do now is crochet the ribbing and attach that. So I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to do that right now. Right guys, it's our final push. This is the last hard thing we need to do for this sweater. We want to count the amount of stitches in the round for the arms as well as the body. I then get the arm circumference and divide it by 3, and I'm going to get the circumference of the body and divide that by 2. Now, dividing the arm circumference by 3 for the ribbing is just going to mean that there's more of a drastic cinch created by the cuff. I would not increase the number that you divide your circumference of the body by, but you can go ahead and divide the arm circumference by 2 if you prefer. If you're a beginner, just round these to the closest whole number, but I think ribbing looks nicer in even numbers, so I'm going to determine what amount of rows I would like to use for my ribbing, and then get the amount of rows and times it by the number that I divided the amount of stitches by. Then I just like to mark down how many stitches difference this will be. So for example, 50 times 2 is 100, so this is 2 less than 102. Now we just need to do the same pattern that we used to make the ribbing for our turtleneck at the start. And obviously here you can go ahead and customize the length of your cuffs based on how long you would like them to be. Once you've crocheted the start and end of your piece together, you want to go ahead and fold this inside out, so the bump that we have created by that row of single crochets is inside of our cuff. Now I'm going to use single crochets to attach these two together. I want to line up the seam of my arm with the seam of my cuff. How you're going to do this is you're going to enter your hook into the second chain of your turning chain, which should kind of look like your seam, and then to the left of where you've just done that row of single crochets on your cuff, you should have an available double crochet. Now you want to yarn over, pull through both of those spots that you went through and do a single crochet. So for each single crochet you want to be going around both a stitch in the sleeve and around a double crochet bar in the cuff. So I'm going to do 3 single crochets, 1 in each stitch in the sleeve, but they should all be in the same stitch in the cuff. So as you can see, they all fall in that same bar. Now I'll do this again, where on my 4th stitch I'm going to move along the bar, do my 1st stitch, move along stitch in the sleeve but not in the cuff. Then I want to do that 3rd single crochet, so I have a total of 6 single crochets in 2 of the bars, and this was the maths that we were doing earlier. So this is why I divided the stitches in the sleeve by 3, because effectively I wanted to do 3 single crochets into each bar of double crochet created by the ribbing. But if you remember, I ended up adding an extra bar, so that means that I've effectively added 3 single crochets I can't account for within the circumference of the sleeve. So to counter this, I will do 3 stitches around each bar for every stitch, apart from 3 of them, which I'll do 2. This will take away 3 of my double crochets. No matter how you make it work, as long as you're doing 1 single crochet into each stitch in your sleeve, you're happy. From here you're going to slip stitch into the first stitch that you made before cutting your yarn and pulling that through. We can now repeat this for the other cuff as well as the ribbing that we want around the bottom of our jumper. For the ribbing of this jumper, I decided that I was going to do 2 stitches around each one of the bars, and I had 2 extra stitches. So to make up for this, I'm going to be doing 3 stitches around 2 of the bars. For these extra stitches I'm adding or taking away, I just try and spread them out equally to make it look as neat and seamless as possible. If this maths is tripping you up, I honestly would just pin the ribbing on and sew it together. I just think the rows of single crochet look really nice with this pattern and make it look a lot neater. No matter which way you attach your cuffs, you now just need to sew in your ends to finish off your jumper. So I thought, as this is a long video anyway, I would show you how I sew in my end. So the first time I sew in my end, I do it quite normally. I just kind of loop in whatever stitches I can, and I try and make it about 1 inch long. From here, what I'll do is I'll go back through the same points, making sure I go through not only different points in the stitches, but different points in the thread that I just thread through. So I'm not just going through the stitches like I was before, I'm going through the stitches as well as coming out of those stitches and going into the piece of thread that I've just thread through. And I do this 3 more times, so I'm threading my needle back and forth 4 times in total, but you'll feel that the more you do this, the harder it will get, and this is just your end becoming super secure. Going in and out of the thread will kind of knot your end together and stop it from coming undone in the wash like this one did. And then once you're finished with sewing in your ends, your turtleneck is done. I definitely wanted a nice plain cropped turtleneck, and I'm really happy with how it came out. In the future, I definitely want to do this pattern again, but make my turtleneck oversized. So definitely keep a lookout for that. Thank you so much again for watching. I can't wait to see what you guys make out of this pattern. Like, comment and subscribe to this channel, and as I say, check out my Etsy. I have some very cool patterns out at the moment, so please go check them out. Please have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.